Let's see. This is frustrating. Let me see. What if I try that? Twitch app on my phone is frozen on my stream. That's rough. I just want to check if it's working. What if I do this? Doesn't seem to. Let's see here. How else can I do this? Why is this not working? This is such an annoying issue. We'll go to not that one. This one. What's frustrating is OBS is saying it's picking it up, but it's like clearly not. OBS is saying. There is another way that we can do this. It's just not as it is not as pretty, and I can't really do what I try to do on this. I could restart the stream, I guess. Let me see. What else? could restart my computer, but I don't like that option as much. Because that could take forever. And then I'd have to pull up all of the fun stuff I've prepared today. But I just don't know why it's not working. That is frustrating. Maybe that. Nope. Where's my... Wow. No. Oh, okay. You could hear two songs playing at once. Can you hear this? No. Why can't you hear that? That doesn't make any sense. Sorry, I'm like listening to it on Oh, I turned off desktop audio, that's why. Hello. Oh, I turned off desktop audio, that's why. Hello. Oh, I turned off. Okay, okay. Alright. Apparently just everything was set too low on my computer end, but turned up on my my mixer end. So everything was working for me, but didn't work for anyone else. Let me see why this isn't on. What? Oh. Okay. Problems solved. Finally. Woof. I don't know why that was the case. I think I turned everything down because when I was playing Resident Evil with my roommate, the sound was just way too high. And I was like, holy shit, guys, calm the fuck down, and turned everything down. So I couldn't hear him, and so now it's all fixed. It's all good. All right, now we're gonna get into this finally. Sorry.
Hey man, I'm looking for this record. You've probably never heard of it.
She was like the old Bruce Lee quote, "Be like water." She was my water, rushing into all the cracks.
My 12-year-old sister killed herself. She died right here. Right where we're standing.
Hey, dude, cool it with that! No one cares about your sister right now.
A lot of people hate Y2K. And it's not hard to see why. As someone who adores turn-based RPGs, playing Y2K feels like seeing this genre through the eyes of someone who hates these games.
So this is, like I was trying to mention before, this is something that quite a few people try to mention about Y2K, that it's like made by people who hate RPGs, because it's also something that happens with a lot of art that is like slightly subversive, or even has like a deeper message relating to the characters, and I don't really understand it. I don't understand why somebody would think that this is like a game that, you know, hates RPGs or whatever. sure, it is being critical of somebody who would think that their life is an RPG, but I think where it comes from is they kind of see this criticism of the players of RPGs or people that try to, like hearing how Yoko Taro hates action games. I don't know. I guess that's fair. It is a funny narrative to go, yeah, these people hate RPGs and that's why they made a shitty RPG. I guess that can be seen as really funny. But I don't really see it the same way. We're innovating a bit with the battle system, but Lee said he straight up hates our JRPGs. Yeah, I did read that article. I think that was a little weird because the person who wrote the article really framed it like these people are the people changing or innovating RPGs entirely. And it's really kind of ironic because the battle system that Andrew and Brian added into the game weren't part of their original vision. Originally, it was going to be more of a straightforward Dragon Quest style. And they kind of... I think it was probably their publisher. I don't remember exactly. But somebody had said, hey, you should add in these mini games to make the game more engaging and more fun. And so they did. And it's kind of funny if people try to, like, how that article comes out and tries to frame it as if they don't like RPGs, so they're fixing them. And that's not the case. They love RPGs. The game is just filled with references to other RPGs that they really like. And it's just this really silly notion to kind of go, yeah, they hate RPGs.
The game attempting to emulate grand, thought-provoking narrative.
And there was something I mentioned before, but I'm going to be pausing a lot because UrickSaladbar throws in a bunch of extra text that kind of tries to emphasize this point or make more points on top of what he's saying. So we're going to have to pause to read them. The Shadow Hearts devs hated RPGs by that logic. Absolutely. Never liked RPG. You know who really hated RPGs? Persona 5. Like, the Atlas absolutely hates JRPGs. That's why they made Persona 5. They made the first RPG.
It's only to come off as pretentious. Its stylized aesthetic isn't charming enough to save a weak cast of characters. Whatever good qualities it has.
Okay, so pretentious ideas and themes that lead up to nothing and end up unsatisfying. I thoroughly disagree with this. It is kind of pretentious to assume that because you don't understand the narrative that there's nothing there, or that because you haven't found or explored a deeper meaning to it, or that or find where it's leading to, that it just doesn't exist. It's extremely ironic that a lot of people point out this as being super pretentious when, in fact, that is a pretentious statement on its own. Shallow style and service of one-dimensional characters trapped in an unfocused story. The story is arguably too focused. It's to its own detriment, as I've mentioned in past streams. The story is Alex's perspective on Alex's issues, and it's while you may see these characters as one-dimensional, I can go over them and kind of explain a lot better than UrickSaladbar can about the depth of these characters, who they are and what they're supposed to be. But yeah, so 2 big negative points for UrickSaladbar, and they're already kind of missing the point. Like, as far as it's funny how the pretentious statement about its themes and ideas immediately counteracts the shallow point. Everything is in service of its narrative towards Alex, which leads to the other characters not being important because they're not important to Alex. So it's just kind of super ironic It makes the pretentious statement even more awful. Charming art style. Hey, we agree there. Characters' ideas. I don't know what that means. If he likes the ideas of what the characters are supposed to represent, then you just like the characters, my guy. Gameplay ideas. Yeah, they had great ideas, and they improved them with 1.25. Voice acting, given with the material they were given. I think he's trying to say that he doesn't like the story with that bottom, but he likes the voice acting. And I agree. I do like the voice acting in YIIK. Some delivery could have been better, but given the scope of the project and how they produced it, it's kind of reasonable in my opinion. So like all of the voice acting was recorded in-house under a few days with each person. From what I remember, they explained it like they kind of tried to record it like it was a what is that called? It's like the first reading, you know, when they do readings of movies or shows, they'll radio play, kind of like a radio play. It is when they first do a reading of it, they'll have the voice actors, they'll give them the scripts, and they'll just sit there and read it out. And they kind of tried to do it like that, like kind of like a stage play a bit, so that way the lines could work off of each other. Table read, yes, table read. That's what I was thinking of. So I do feel like some lines probably should have gotten some more takes to try to like emphasize different parts and like, but it was also the first time they had to do voice acting, and they, you know, there was a lot of mistakes made here and there. But I think as an indie studio who just added voice acting to their game, it's you know, it's not terrible. It's serviceable. And at times it's even better than what I would expect out of a small project like this. Yes, I think that's a big issue with a lot of the criticism of the game is they forget that it's an indie project. Let's continue. We're only 47 minutes in and I've talked too much already.
Is obscured by
Or seconds.
problems that are impossible.
Here we go. Woo, this is another big one. Unsatisfying chemistry, unlikable characters, redundant mechanics, an uninteresting world, boring dungeons, broken economy, sluggish combat. This is his big list of things that he doesn't like about Y2K. Unsatisfying chemistry. I kind of find that to be intentional with who these characters are and who Alex is specifically. These aren't people that Alex has known for a long time outside of Michael, but even this Michael isn't the Michael that he knows. So like the chemistry, while it feels like it isn't there, I think they kind of, you know, it's Alex dragging these people along into these dumb situations. He's being an asshole, you know? So the chemistry makes more sense when you realize that. And then you kind of start to understand that a lot of these characters are a lot nicer than they should be. So unlikable characters, I don't know. I guess I could see why you don't like some of them because they talk too much, but I think they're all great. Michael's an awesome character. Yo, what's up, Chloe? Redundant mechanics. I know probably exactly what he's referring to, which is the overworld items that you use. He's probably referring to Hair Whip and the bass drop. And yeah, that is a fault. Andrew and Brian recognize that there's a problem with that, and there's not a lot excusing it other than when you know the production around it, where the dungeons were pre-made and then those were added on top of it because outside of the ones where it's like well used, which is intentional, the other ones kind of were like, oh, we forgot, or somebody that was working on that dungeon forgot that we had this mechanic that we were working with. and let's just kind of put this in here. I think this is something they're trying to address in 1.5. They're making a slight tweak that should make this a little bit better. But there is a difference. The redundancy of it is kind of the same as it is in Pokemon. You know, Cut and Rock Smash are exactly the same mechanic. They just clear an obstacle. However, in YIIK, rocks or similar objects are usually hiding something underneath them where trees aren't. They're just blocking your path. So it's not entirely redundant, but it is a flaw. So touche. You know, it's like it's one of those things. I don't think it's the worst thing ever, and it's just a, you know, slight mistake, if anything. Uninteresting world. This, I feel like everybody ends up contradicting themselves on this point. They go, I don't like the world, I don't care about it. But then they go, yeah, but there's these really neat mechanics and like the ideas are really cool. You like the world then. You think the world's interesting. If you like the concept of the parallel universes within YIIK, then you like the world. That is the world building. I am sorry. You do. Boring dungeons. Yeah, some of the dungeons kind of suck. That's fair. I really like the Essentia dungeon, and Mount Town. I like Mount Town, but after playing it so much, it's not as charming. There's some parts of the Essentia dungeon that are really fun, but some of the puzzles have the same problem with Mount Town, where after you've done it maybe once or twice, they become awful. They're just annoying to do, and it's not as cool. Bella's Mine Dungeon was really cool. Everybody loves Bella's Mine Dungeon. And I know the sewer is kind of rough, but I think the new added section and some tweaks that might happen might make it a little bit better. Not really save it, but just make it a bit better. Broken economy. I don't care. I don't care to argue against this point. I think the economy that's broken is a point that the game is trying to make about how Alex doesn't struggle. And I think it's also a great mechanic in order to make the game easier if somebody is struggling. If the economy was perfectly balanced, where you are struggling the whole time, then I think there would be a lot less way to make the game easy, or there would be no way to make the game easier for somebody that's struggling with it. Because the way the battle scaling works, you should always have, like, not necessarily difficult fights, but the enemy's levels scale with you. So you're going to have fights that are, really something that, or they'll always deal damage to you. But if you're actually struggling with it, the broken economy helps out a lot, because you can just buy recovery items, or you can just buy the strongest equipment, and it makes it, quite a bit better. I think it is a great way to balance the difficulty of the game, because you kind of choose it. Whether you engage with buying all these items at shops or not kind of determines your game difficulty. I personally don't buy that much stuff. I'll buy a bunch of recovery items and then use them outside of battle, because you don't get healed during battle. So it's kind of like it works in a way. But I can see why people don't like it. I just don't think people realize what it's supposed to be. They kind of just think of it how it would be in every other RPG, in my opinion. Sluggish combat. This is something that they've worked to try to address. I don't really ever understand people's combat complaints. So I might not be the best person to argue this, but people talk about combat being slow, and that is a fault. Yet Dark Souls is extremely popular. It's really a weird thing. People talk about how Nier Automata's combat is really good, yet you can straight up just not do the combat at all. you can buy chips and go on easier difficulty to not do any of the combat. It also gives you an easy out with the pod, where it's you get to fire and stun enemies, so you can really disengage from a situation and then choose to re-engage with it at any point. So it's like I can kind of see, you know, I don't really see where slow combat is necessarily a bad thing, especially when in a lot of instances, and like in this game, it, you know, to me, RPGs are strategy games. They're like, it's not to the point of like Fire Emblem where you're literally chessboard doing it, but I'm thinking about every action before I make them. So, you know, the timing or whatever of the combat, I don't really understand. And on top of that, with the New Balance update, it's a lot better. I personally did playthroughs where I was at the lowest level you can be throughout the entire game and didn't have a problem with how long the combat scenarios were. Like, once you understand the mechanics and how they work together, you can do a lot of things like insanely quick. It's just a matter of understanding what you're supposed to do. And that's how most games are. When you understand them, the game works quicker. When you don't understand them, you're slower at it. So I never understand the slow combat, you know, criticism. Rushed or forgotten story arcs. I want you, like, I could explain this to you, but I want you to think about why some story arcs seem faster and why some story arcs get dropped. And when you think about that, realize Alex is telling you the story. Why is Vela's story just kind of rushed and give to you? Because that's how Alex feels in the moment with his obsession with Vela. He is picking out every single detail and is making this thing, you know, this more grand narrative about how he's saved Vela. When it's not really a thing. And then the forgotten story arcs of other characters that seem to just get dropped, those are characters Alex doesn't have any interest in. He doesn't care about Claudio or Chandra that much. So, of course, he's not going to sit there and tell you about all of that. You got to, like, this is one of these things. You got to realize the game is from Alex's perspective. That from minute one, the game starts up and you go, hey, yo, I just got from college. And it's like, oh, you know, the story is coming from that guy, not the other people. And then he goes, it was meant to be that way type stuff that just doesn't work out. I don't know what he's talking about. If he's talking about how what I just explained, that's extremely frustrating. You're just not engaging with the artwork at all. You're just saying, okay, yeah, but I don't want to think about it at all. It's like, okay, cool.
Ignore. And what we're left with is an indie game that shows how badly you can screw up a potentially good RPG.
Potentially good. This is a thing a lot of people talk about with YIIK. They talk about its potential. And I think whenever you see something that has good potential, you should look at it more to try to find what is actually there. Because the thing that I find insulting about it as an artist is when people say, oh, this has potential, everything has potential. That's not saying anything. You know, a rock on the street has potential to be a weapon. It is not a profound statement. You're not saying, what you're saying is, there's something I kind of liked in here, but I didn't take the time to really develop an appreciation for it.
The 2010s was a crazy decade for indie video game development. A whole 10 years pushing the boundaries of what small, passionate teams can do, where we found new, unique voices that took risks and received critical.
I could talk on end about the 2010s and indie games and how there's a lot of misconceptions about what is indie games and whatever, but this is not that stream.
claim. Then you have games like Hollow Knight that have clear inspirations yet still maintain its own voice. But you'll have your duds too. Sometimes a team ends up churning out a ukulele instead of a hat and time.
So he's mentioned the two big ones, Mighty Number 9 and Ukulele. You can tell that somebody doesn't really understand the development of video games when they bring up these games and just call them failures. Mighty Number 9 isn't a failure because it's supposed to be this Mega Man clone, or it's supposed to be, Keiji Inafune's next game. It was a failure because it was overambitious. It was trying to make a 3D platformer when it was a team that was only really able to do 2D games. And while you, as a person, a consumer, you might not see the difference between a game that appears 2D and a game that actually is 2D. But the programming side of it makes it completely different. The game design in Mighty Number 9 is flawed, and the level design is mostly the culprit. But the concept and a lot of the presentation of it is a little rough too. But the concept of it is solid, and you know why I can say it's solid and it works is because there's a game called Mighty Gunvolt, which is a crossover between Mighty Number 9 and Gunvolt Striker. And it uses the gameplay style of Mighty Number 9, but in what the developer is used to, a 2D plain 2D action game. And it's well received, it's well liked. People say this is what Mighty Number 9 should have been, and honestly, to an extent, I agree. But Mighty Number 9 isn't a failure because it was a bad game made poorly. It was a failure because they tried to do something that they could not do, and or that they didn't have any experience in doing, or however you want to phrase it. Ukulele, on the other hand,
sometimes a team ends up churning out a ukulele instead.
Ukulele is exactly what it was supposed to be. The problem with it was they made exactly a new Banjo-Kazooie, and there's been a lot of innovation since then. And Banjo-Kazooie was never really that great of a game to begin with. I know I'm going to get a lot of hate for that, but listen, the game design itself is exactly the same as Banjo-Kazooie, to its detriment. And while, yes, they could have made something more polished and whatever, that's not what they were aiming for. Banjo-Kazooie came out at a time when 3D platformers were new, and they were trying to, Banjo-Kazooie is much more concise. Yeah, it's really rough. It's really rough to try to describe ukulele, and it's so difficult because it's like it was a game made for the early 2000s or the late 90s. It was made exactly off of that design principle, and like that doesn't work now, and we can see that with Balan Wonderland. It's another game made for that exact time period, early 2000s, late 90s, and it's like, yeah, but people don't like that anymore. Where I love those janky old platformers and, games that are trying to do weird concepts, and I love those games. Even if they aren't good, I still have an appreciation for them, and I think Ukulele delivered on exactly what it was promising, but people didn't actually want that. They wanted something new and fresh and like an evolution of the previous idea. And then he's going to mention Hat in Time, and I'll agree. Hat in Time is probably the greatest 3D platformer out there right now, but they didn't have the same design principle going forward. A Hat in Time tried to be a new Super Mario Sunshine with tighter controls. So comparing them seems really disingenuous.
Of a Hat in Time. And Y2K, a postmodern RPG, follows the same pattern. Like other indie titles, it has a clear love for the genre it's trying to emulate while providing its own spin to it. And from a glance, it looks quite nice. Its flat, solid colors and low poly aesthetic reminds me if Earthbound was done in the visual style of a Katamari game. And the hook is that it's a love letter to JRPGs with a self-aware personality, with the lead role being an unlikable protagonist inspired by the flaws of our generation. While I'm not expecting the Spec Ops of RPGs, this is an interesting idea. But, unfortunately, the game's execution of this ends up being very disappointing. We are treated to a bland cast of characters with unfulfilling arcs.
Ooh, let's go back. I don't want to sit here and explain this one right now. I kind of wanted. There was a moment where I really wanted to.
Ends up being very.
There was a moment where I really wanted to go in depth about why this screen is really wrong. Man, I did not pause it. I hit the unmute button. Why this screen is really wrong and how he just doesn't understand the other characters. I think we'll come back to this after the video because trying to insert it now just kind of throws off a lot of pacing and doesn't really address what he's talking about right now.
Unsatisfying fights and self-indulgent laughable dialogue. It's a game that's all style without substance. A shallow pond begging for depth. And the most disheartening thing about...
I haven't played Spec Ops The Line. I probably should because I keep hearing it as a postmodern game and I'm like, well... I don't really care about shooters like that much. I don't really care about military style shooters. I usually care about more fantasy style shooters.
About this is that the game had potential.
Had potential. We already talked about the potential. Alex, built for hate.
So
this
here's
is the
story.
segment.
We follow Alex in the year 1999. He returns
1999.
to his hometown after recently graduating college. Shortly after arrival, he explores a deserted factory and finds a girl named Sammy Park. After their short time together, during an elevator ride, Sammy gets taken away by mysterious figures. Having witnessed this bizarre and traumatic experience, Alex is determined to find Sammy and understand this mysterious world he's about to uncover.
You need to explain this. You're gonna have to explain how this is all possible.
What is going on?
What's happening?
I've been sitting here for 30 minutes while you and Rory talked in riddles and ignored my questions. What is a soul survivor?
Alex is
See, this is really funny. He has this compilation to just kind of be like, oh, Alex doesn't get anything. He's dumb, whatever. But not realizing what that means. Alex is a person who acts like he knows what the fuck is going on. In almost every other conversation that aren't those, Alex is telling you what's happening, like he knows what's happening. But in the moment, he is asking what's happening. He doesn't understand what's going on. He's asking for answers. Like, this, it perfectly illustrates, like, an aspect of Alex that not a lot of people really picked up on. And it's kind of funny that he goes, hey, here's this thing. This is funny. And it's like, oh, no, you're exactly showing them this. And maybe that was intentional. Maybe I'm missing the great artistic ability of UrickSaladbar. But given what he says about it, I don't think he really got that.
is described as hipster scum on the Y2K website, so he's intended to be quite unlikable. They achieved this so well, in fact,
And then he has part of his Dick Show quote there.
that they got backlash for it. It's actually how I initially came across this game in the first place. And one of the devs for the game, Andrew Allison, said
Oh,
this
we're
in
getting in the
response
Dick
to
Show
negative
quote.
feedback.
Hell yeah.
My mistake was thinking that video games are art. I wanted to make a game about a guy who's an unlikable character, who by the end of the game has to transform. But too many gamers, when they look at this, when they play a game, they're so used to having to identify with the character, that if they play a game where the main character...
See, he just recommends, Urick at this statement here only says that he's assuming that the last part is satirical. The whole thing is supposed to be kind of satirical. He's trying to play up this character of this punished Venom, Andrew Allenson, people hate my game. This was in response to a tweet where somebody does the, what's his name? Reggie Fils-Aimé. Games are supposed to be fun. Well, if games are supposed to be fun and only can be fun, then video games are toys. This is kind of the point that he's making. And he's making it in this really grand way. because he's like, look, look, if you're gonna criticize the game, criticize it for its faults and not that you just didn't like it or you didn't get it. And I agree with that sentiment, but you know, some people don't. So what he's highlighting these words because he's going to make a point with it next, and then I'm going to make a counterpoint to his entire assessment of this.
Is unlikable or has to do some bad stuff, they immediately get triggered by it. So the thing is, games aren't art. They're toys for children, and it's considered in bad form to talk about anything meaningful or impactful or thought-provoking.
Yes, and the guests are supposed to be these, you know, obnoxious fucking edgelords. So he was kind of playing up a character of that. So here's his point. He wants to make a game about a character who's a piece of shit. Gamers don't like it when you have a main character that are pieces of shit. And nobody can talk about anything that's meaningful. This is the highlight. This is beautiful. This tells you exactly what a lot of people that hate the game, this is what they see from that quote. They don't see everything else. When everything else is really important around it. When he says, I want to make a guy who's a piece of shit, they go and talk about other piece of shit characters. But they miss the unlikable part. And when they go, oh, but he changes at the end because he has to transform, they miss the has to. They think that means he does transform at the end of the game. No, he has to. If they play a game where a main character is unlikable or has to do bad stuff, they immediately get triggered by it. And it's not that, you know, it's just this, they're missing the fact that you have to identify with the character. And that doesn't mean, you know, that doesn't mean that you have to go and think, this is me. You realize that a piece of the character is meaningful to you. You see Brad from Lisa and you go, yes, you know, I've thought about how I could protect somebody. And like, that makes you think, oh, you know, he has this, you relate, you identify with him, you identify with this aspect of him. And this aspect is usually a good thing. But when it's not a good thing that you're relating to or identifying with that character, people tend to have a problem with that. And yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. I do think people struggle to understand characters that aren't meant to be likable, that have faults, and ask you to identify with their faults rather than what their honest, you know, these honest, like good-natured type of things. Doing that podcast in the first place was a real bad idea. Yeah, I agree. I think Andrew even understands that was a really bad, a really bad move. And then this video says, I have no opinion on YIIK and I didn't care for them. Yeah, you should explore YIIK more, please. YIIK is really fun. I hope that I kind of make a good argument through this for why you should probably check out YIIK, or at least maybe a bit of why YIIK is more interesting than people make it out to be. It's on the backlog.
For Andrew, unlikable characters.
So a lot of people will tell you to wait for 1.5. I'm not one of those people. I think you should play 1.25 first. But it's not wrong to wait. So I'm not going to shame you for waiting, but if you're genuinely interested and want to try it out, I do think 1.25 is good enough. And then come back to it again when 1.5 comes out, because there's going to be a lot of new stuff. And a lot of it comes in New Game Plus. So like you're supposed to play through the game first and then play through it again, kind of like Nier.
That do bad things for narrative purposes.
This is the big one.
Isn't a new concept in games. We can still be engaged by this archetype because of morbid curiosity or the comedy derived from
So he is trying to say why he likes or why people relate to these characters. And so I've created a really fun thing today. We're going to do this little slideshow I threw together called Why UrickEnining is Wrong. And I'm completely right because I'm the smartest person ever. Don't question me. Just follow, just trust me. So UrickEnining is wrong about unlikable characters. An unlikable character in a lot of media is somebody who's flawed and acts like an asshole. Let's throw up some backing track music. Let's get maybe this one. Sammy's theme. That's a good one. We'll turn that down a little bit. All right. So UrickEnining is wrong. When we talk about unlikable characters in media, usually we're talking about characters that people are quite fond of, ironically enough. These are characters that have critical faults that make them, not quite as relatable. As he said, Alex is intended to be as unlikable as possible. Unlikable being the most important word in that sentence. While UrickEnining makes a good point, the thing about Alex being unlikable is a lot of people immediately go and say he should be more likable. That's the solution. That's the solution to Alex's character. And I disagree. Understanding who Alex is and what Alex is supposed to be should be your solution and not make Alex more likable. So what do I mean by this? What are the examples that UrickEnining used just a moment ago? He used Trevor from GTA 5. Cam is in the way. Let me actually just turn off my webcam real quick. Sorry about that. I'll go back one slide real quick. That way you can see this whole screen. And I'll also turn off the chat. So, I was going to do a lot more, but I put this together in like an hour. Trevor from GTA 5. I feel like I don't have to tell you why this is a really bad comparison. The GTA series is this long-running... I feel like there was another slide before this, but it might have got misordered. But long-running crime drama. And Trevor is a complete fucking psychopath. He does things that are just awful. But they're all played up to be really funny and I wouldn't say charming, but the same kind of thing. It's the same reason you'd like characters like Walter from Breaking Bad, etc. They have some kind of sick justification for it that is so bizarre and out of left field that you go, oh, yeah, I understand that this isn't exactly a real person. This is a character of sociopathy, etc. And in GTA 5, he kind of represents how players or how an audience interacts with that game. They don't really just sit there and play a game, They don't sit there and just follow the narrative and be good boys or whatever and, have tragic faults. They kind of just go off handle and have these asshole-ish tendencies of just killing random people. So, there's some depth to him, but he's a piece of shit. And it's really surface level. He's a cartoon character at the end of the day. Next, we have Vincent Brooks from Catherine. Vincent is under an extremely odd situation where he is being manipulated into cheating on his girlfriend. While that is something that is, you might not relate to it. You might be completely loyal to your lover, and please be. Vincent, however, struggles with with his relationship, and ultimately it gets put into your hands as to what happens. I'm not going to spoil Catherine much, but it's like, that's the point. he may have cheated on his girlfriend, but the circumstance he's in is relatable. You know, it's not him. He hasn't created this problem, but the problem is more external. He's gotten into this circumstance that is really bizarre and out of his control, and he's trying desperately to put it back together and whatever. And how that turns out is up to you. For some reason, I think there was a slide that had Kratos on it because he used Kratos as an example. Maybe it's the next one. I thought I had it as the first one. Ethan from Silent Hill. The game is literally just about how flawed he is. It is, you know, Silent Hill is a representation of hell. It is like essentially in the context of YIIK, a mind dungeon. It is showing all of his faults and all of this. And that makes him more relatable because you understand why he's such a fucking terrible person. And you have the very satisfying thing of seeing him suffer in hell, basically, for his actions. Okay. I also had Kratos, but I don't know why that slide's gone now. So that said, I'm not saying these are, you know, I'm saying these examples are terrible. I'm not saying that you can't use examples from other medias or there's no good example. Alex is such a profound character. I'm just saying that these examples exemplify why what the issue is that I have with how UrickSaladbar is presenting Alex as a character. But what are characters that are good at showing, or what are good examples of characters that are similar to Alex? Well, we have Scott from Scott Pilgrim. The difference between Scott and Alex is Scott is easily likable. He's this goofy dork who likes video games and plays the bass guitar. Anybody can relate to that because, you know, you don't have to be particularly good to play bass guitar. But what people overlook with Scott is he treats his friends like shit. He pretty much only talks to them in reference to whatever is going on in his life and doesn't really care about his friends. But they're all really nice to him because, you know, sometimes you just have that asshole friend who needs to grow up. Conflating unflawed and unlikable happens so much in every medium. Yeah, I think that is true. So he treats Ramona as an object, as a prize to win at the end of this. And it's like, yeah, Scott's a piece of shit. Like, it doesn't come across because you understand from his perspective, he's this goofy guy who's kind of having a rough time, and has gone through a lot of emotional turmoil, and he has good people who are trying to support him, but he doesn't treat any of them with respect or gives a shit about any of them. And once you've realized that, you've probably grown up and understood the point of Scott Pilgrim. Here's my favorite example. It's Tom from 500 Days of Summer. Tom is a great character who's really charming. People really like Tom, but as it turns out, Tom is a piece of shit. He tries to make this entire situation... The story is presented to you as he's complaining about how he did everything right in his relationship with Summer, but she still just rejected him and tossed him aside. And, like, that's not true. From the beginning of the relationship, Tom has objectified Summer. He's trying to make this relationship happen between him and her that she'd never wanted in the first place. And like Alex, he portrays the situation. He tells you the story about how he did everything right and he really tried really hard. Maybe he made a few mistakes here and there, but promise me it's not my fault. Same as Lance from World's Greatest Dad, the main character of the series. He writes the book like he's an author. He's writing a book, and he tells you at the beginning that he just put in, like, I think it was his 5th book, and the 5th book is the movie itself. And when you realize that, you understand that all the characters are these exaggerated the opposite of what actually happened. The one character is presented as if she was just a whore and a slut and didn't really care about him, when the opposite is he's trying to force himself into a relationship with this character who is already committed to some other relationship. And he's presenting this to try to be sympathetic. He's trying to think that, hey, if everybody just sees me as this really sympathetic person who is just treated like shit by all of these people, my actions aren't nearly as bad. But really, he's just a piece of shit. And there we go. That's those characters. A side note on Tom is this isn't just this isn't just an assumption of what the purpose of this character is. If we go to this tweet from Joseph Gordon-Levitt, watch it again. It's mostly Tom's fault. He's projecting. He's not listening. He's selfish. And luckily he grows at the end. This is an intentional design by the movie. It is intentionally written for this character to be a piece of shit who only understands his who projects this entire situation to where he's a good character. And it's commonly misunderstood that Summer is this awful person in the story when the reality is Tom is the awful person. So I just wanted to sit there and go, hey, look, there's a difference between the difference between faults and or what flaws you were trying to portray and what kind of faults are truly a part of Alex. When you understand the character, you can make these more nuanced takes on what the character's supposed to be like. But when you go and say he's just supposed to be unlikable, he's just supposed to be a piece of shit, and you grab random other characters that you like and you put them up and say these are pieces of shit characters that are likable and are good, but people don't like them, you miss the point. You immediately miss the point. So yeah, you've completely missed the point, and then you're trying to represent it as if you were already correct, and that's really rough. That you make the situation worse by doing this.
Actions. But Alex doesn't do anything to keep us engaged with his story. He doesn't have any redeemable qualities, and yet we're supposed to be intrigued in his obsession of a girl he just met. How am I supposed to...
So, this last line here really exemplifies the quote and the aspect that I was wanting him to focus on, or wanting people to focus on with the quote. And even this quote even comes up and really pushes it as well. The problem is you're not relating to qualities that you like about this Alex. Or what I like in a character with Alex. With Alex, you're relating to things that are really negative. You go, yeah, I've been that person before. Or, yeah, I've been a bit pretentious before. Those are the things you're relating to Alex with. With, like, Scott, you're relating to his dorky personality and the idea that, maybe I've been mistreated and been on stupid fucking journeys just to maybe have a date with somebody. Or and similar things to that. You're not relating with their faults. You're relating with their redeemable qualities. But Alex isn't supposed to be redeemable. You're just supposed to understand. Like, you're supposed to find his faults, relate to his faults, and be a better person because you know what those faults are.
To care when he's unredeemable by design. If this is the case, why does any character put up with him to begin with? And if you're wondering if he has an arc of some sort, he does realize his shortcomings along the way.
This is one I always like to bring up whenever everybody shows this scene. These aren't Alex's actual faults. These are surface level faults that Alex may portray, but he is telling you, I'm getting better. I've moved past these. These aren't real problems. Being slightly pretentious isn't a real issue. That doesn't cause you to lose all your friends. Being lazy, Alex isn't lazy. Alex goes on this huge adventure for shitty reasons, sure, but he goes out of his way to go fucking everywhere across this map. You know, being a consumer, being obsessed with media, that's not a real fault. Nobody cares. Masturbating too much. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about your masturbation habits, Alex. Sure, it's gross. You shouldn't you shouldn't be doing this. You shouldn't be telling people about this. Yeah, get over that, please. But Alex's real fault is how fucking selfish he is. And none of these exemplify how selfish he is. These are just really, these are a result of him being selfish.
And fights his inner demons a la Persona 4. It looks cool, but it fails to be cathartic because we don't care about him. His motivations are super...
See, and then he goes, because you don't care about him. Maybe they're not supposed to be cathartic because they aren't actually his real faults. Maybe he's just portraying them to make you think he's gotten better. So I feel like that's a really rough explanation of what's going on there. You're not engaging with the character. You're not understanding who the character is, and so you're making up other reasons as to why you don't like this character. When there's already pieces in place for you to not like this character. And this is a dumb argument here. Talking about intent as far as art goes is always really difficult. When people talk about this is the artist's intention, they're not saying there's no reason this can be criticized. This was what it was supposed to be. No, what they're saying is, hey, have you thought about how this is supposed to be portrayed? What is the point of that they're trying to make by having this intent? And that's where a lot of these essays fall flat. They don't understand the intent. They see the intent and they go, well, that's no excuse. No, when you see Alex is intended to be an asshole, and then you think on top of it, consider what's going on, you can extrapolate so much more about what the message of the game is supposed to be. What's the point of the character? What's the point of any of the adventure at all? But you intending to film a turd in a stationary shot and doing that what's your point? Like, your intent is stupid, sure, but if you don't have a point to go along with that intent, if you don't have a meaning behind it, then you're failing to understand what intent in art is even supposed to be. If your intent is just to be like, yeah, all feature films are shit, well, there you go. You made a shitty piece of art. You could have done that in a number of different ways, sure. But does the intent match up with the point? Okay, sure. But no, your little hyperbolic example doesn't really present the issue in a meaningful way at all.
Official actions unrelatable, thoughts uninteresting.
Actions unrelatable, I disagree. Maybe you don't. Yeah, it feels like the people who walk into modern art exhibits, I could have made that. But you didn't. That's the fault. You didn't make it. Sorry. Actions unrelatable. Alex is actually way more relatable, and you just don't want to admit it. That's the big problem with this, is a lot of people don't want to admit how Alex is relatable. You've probably blown up on somebody, been mean to somebody once, and regretted it. And that's a lot of what makes Alex Alex, is he expresses, hey, I did this, and tries to butter up and make it seem like it's okay and that he's working on himself, but he really isn't. And maybe you don't relate to that second part, but you definitely relate to the first part. And to say otherwise is ridiculous to me.
Whatever breadcrumbs of vindication we get from Alex is
Yeah, you missed the point of Alex. That's all I can really say.
too little too late and lacks any sort of impact. By the time we face his shadows,
Like, literally, I feel like that's supposed to be a thing that he's supposed to be like, oh, we're supposed to like Alex?
after 20 hours,
No.
reality is essentially broken. The friends
20 hours. I hate when people bring up how long something is, because it's just really silly.
he made along the way are dead, and we can't see a world where Alex lives a life as a changed man.
Well, that's your interpretation, Urick, and I want to disagree with it. The truth, in my opinion, is that these people aren't dead. The world isn't destroyed. Alex thinks his world is destroyed because he pushed his friends away by being a piece of shit. And by doing so, he feels his world is ended. He tries to make it this really profound, objective thing, but it's not true. These people moved on and stopped talking to Alex. And so they go and they have their character arcs and they all become better people, whatever. Alex doesn't. Alex is trapped in this cycle.
By the way, for some reason, Alex is the reason why the fabric of reality is falling apart. And for some reason, the narrative unfolds into the idea of parallel universes. And for some reason, the game wants us to think it's being smart.
Urick, you can just tell me you didn't understand the story of YIIK. Alex isn't the most important person in the universe, even though he acts like he is. The world doesn't literally get destroyed at the end of the game. His world gets destroyed at the end of the game. Everything he thinks he cares about is gone. That's the problem that a lot of the criticism of the game has, is they try to go, well, if he's the most important person, he gets justified by all of this. No, Alex is never the most important person in the room, ever. He just thinks he is. He thinks he's this really profound, thought-provoking person. He's not. That's the point. That's the intention. And you missed that intention. And you missed the point. You missed the intention. Like, and you go and think it's a fault. And it's like, sure. The fault of you not getting it is there. But is that the fault of the artwork or the audience? And I don't care. I don't care whose fault it is. You made a huge statement on it. And I'm saying, hey, you missed it.
Excuse me? Much like Bioshock Infinite, the idea of constants and variables appear to justify certain things because fate. It was stupid there, and it's more stupid here. There's always a lighthouse. There's always an asshole. And this concept is used to showcase that Alex must overcome his selfishness in order to save his reality.
So the point here that Urick is missing. When Bioshock Infinite did it, it was supposed to be this huge thing that tied together both games, and it's kind of really trite. It's pedantic and fucking boring. But the point with Y2K is to go, yeah, I know an Alex. I know an Alex in my reality. Yeah, I know that these are people I relate to. That's why you put your friends' names and your name at the beginning of the game, because you're supposed to go, oh yeah, I can see how this relates to me, relates to my world, my worldview, my perspective,
and appreciate the life he was given. Countless Alexes have failed, but you'll be the one to suffer.
It's not cut content. I will fucking kill you people in a video game. It's not cut content. That triggers me so much.
The cycle. let me show you how messy it gets, though. Introducing the relationship between Vela.
Introducing how Urick does not understand anything or the main narrative of YIIK.
And Alex. Alex is a dick, but Vela is drawn to him for some reason.
No. That's not the case at all. Vela is not drawn to Alex in any way. Vela is circumstantially there, and Alex wants Vela to be interested in him. That's about it, really. Like, Alex has this great idea that he'll get together with a Vela, and it'll be the most beautiful, most great thing ever. He will get his summer. But no. Vela doesn't give a shit about Alex. Actually, in fact, every trait of Alex is exactly what Vela does not like in a potential romantic partner.
But the reason why we are on this quest, though, is because his dick is hard for Sammy, who loves him for some reason too. But
no. Sammy never met Alex. Alex never met Sammy. Sammy doesn't love Alex. Alex just projects that really hard on her because he wants that. He wants his manic pixie dream girl GF. He wants his big titty goth GF. He really wants this meaningful relationship with something, and he puts that on all of these women instead of just, going. Hey, I hate how Alex is vindicated at the end, but that cut delusional ending is pretty satisfying. They should have stuck with that one. Yeah. People really be saying that and saying it's better and more satisfying every time, and I just am like, you can't be more wrong. It's not cut. It's not better. It just exemplifies why Alex is a piece of shit and you don't understand it. Anyone made an YIIK essay bingo card yet? We should. We should do that in the server. That would be so good. We should do that. I should do that for the next YIIKENING. And we'll just go through each one.
But then you find out Vela is from a different reality and is coming into this one to forget about her sexually manipulative boyfriend, who turns out to be a parallel version of Alex.
He is not a parallel version of Alex. Alex just has this woe is me stigma about who he is and how he's a piece of shit. And so he thinks, and it is never confirmed, the Essentia does not say, yeah, that is a parallel you. He just goes, oh, I was the piece of shit. No, she is talking about that literal moment right before where Alex brought the music back to Vela. Like he's this great figure in her life. Like he's this really important person to bring back this traumatic situation with her ex-boyfriend who used her and threw her out like fucking garbage. No. You completely missed the point, my guy. I'm sorry. You literally don't understand what's going on in this story.
Then Alex sees a robot
Oh, what was this?
boyfriend, who turns out to be a parallel version of Alex. Then Alex
And he probably just says, I
a
don't know.
boyfriend, who turns out to be a parallel version of Alex. Then
Confused on this part. Emotionally isn't the same person. Came back after disappearing. Blah, blah, blah. The Ascension says otherwise. No. The Ascension never lies. Sorry. And no, she doesn't. She's trying to run away from her problems. You fundamentally missed the entire point of who Vela is. I'm sorry.
Then Alex sees a robot in his dreams, and she says that she's Sammy and Vela from a different reality as...
Yeah, that's one of those I want you to be, and I've argued with people on this on end, but it's the words that she specifically says. She does not say that she's them from different realities.
as well, implying they all share the same soul, so his dick is hard for all of them because of destiny.
The reality of the Essentia is she is just an excuse Alex makes up about the obsession that he has, and tries to justify the fact that later, or the idea that the Essentia is using him to do anything. No, the Essentia doesn't exist. The Essentia represents a lot of things, but no. Sorry.
Destiny? But actually, the robot was lying about being Bella and Sammy, so his dick was hard not because of destiny, but because he wanted to bone the plastic robot on his own accord. She leads us both on, as both the player and Alex, to kill Proto-Alex, so she can separate from him for reasons? P-Alex is the ideal Alex, who uses a comet made out of other Alexes to destroy different realities, just because. Every Alex is either destined to live in the soul space forever, or destroy different realities under P-Alex's lead by being one with the comet. And our Alex's reality being destroyed happens on the titular Y2K event. And
there's a lot to unpack here, but like the main thing is, why does the comet look like our Alex? There's so many different Alexes. Why would it look like our Alex? Maybe it's not because other Alexes are destroying his reality. Maybe it's because Alex himself is banishing all of his friends. He is literally doing the thing that we're figuratively seeing on screen. But what do I know?
to stop this crisis from happening, we must beat P-Alex. We lose to P-Alex, and after a pep talk from a character from the dev's other game, we eventually beat Proto-Alex by turning him off. This turns off all the other Alex realities, and the game just ends, leaving us a parallel version of Alex, the only one alive. Remember Scott Pilgrim? He is also a selfish asshole who falls in love with some random girl. He's a shallow character, but at least he was in a story that wasn't convoluted, which didn't take itself seriously. In Y2K, I'm failing to understand what just dropped on my lap.
So the game's fault is that you don't understand the game. I sounds like you need to try to understand the game. It doesn't sound like the game's at fault there at all.
Maybe you just missed something.
Maybe I did miss something, but
I almost want to make that a thumbnail for
Maybe you
a
just
video.
missed something.
Maybe I
Just right there. There we go. You said it, not me, Urick. You're a fucking idiot who doesn't understand shit. Congrats.
did miss something. But the dialogue is unbearable, and I wouldn't ever want to sit through it again on my own. It feels like somebody stretching out a sentence to either flex their lexicon or reach the minimum essay word count. Internal monologues attempting to be charming and quirky completely fall flat. Characters will indulge in long, uninteresting stories that leave you bored or frustrated. Redundant dialogue that the visuals already communicate ruin potentially good moments. And sometimes characters will abruptly yell their lines.
Developed! This thing is digital, baby! Because we have to save the android!
Okay, like, even not even going, it's kind of like inspired by Murakami. You know, it's supposed to be this thing. It's like, dude, the main character thinks he's being deep. It's all really funny because he thinks he's being really profound. But when we sit there and see it, we're like, no, you're just being an idiot. Like, that's the point.
It's all so familiar!
And the cherry on top is that the tone is all over the place. Remember that clip I mentioned in the beginning? That scene comes after fighting a golden alpaca that shouts lemonade every time it attacks.
Ooh. What does this say down here? I think what the game is going for, that since reality is breaking and parallel universes are converging, or the soul desires enter this reality, the emergence of a golden alpaca is a way to show the bizarre world is becoming... If the threat was less comical, this would have worked, but instead it creates a tone clash. Yeah, see, like, the whole thing of the golden alpaca is it exists as two justifications for Alex. One, to justify the fact that he goes off on Rory by trying to make up some reason they were almost killed in the sewer. The other being that it shows that he does not care about Rory's problem at all. All right, thanks for stopping by. I won't get too upset. I'm just explaining things to people. See, all of us in the YIIK scored call it YIIK, and I always find it funny when people are going off in like whatever review or tweet where they're like, I call it YIIK because that game is gross. No, we all just call it YIIK. It's a fun name. You call it yikes, sure. Nobody really cares what you call it. Just people that think they're saying something by saying that. Yeah. I think YIIK is the best one. Some people call it YIIK, or not YIIK. YIIK. Blundertail. Blundertail's pretty funny. But I think there's a funny one for Lisa.
Your sister is gone. There's no changing this.
I think it's a golden alpaca. Damn it, we need to run!
Lemonade, lemonade, lemonade.
What the hell is going on? I'm worried. What the hell?
And the fact that the rest of the cast is dull.
I love these images.
Doesn't help. I feel like they're only present because other RPGs have large character ensembles. And that's it. These characters have neat hints at ideas.
Claudio should have honestly been the main character. Oh, I mean, I don't disagree, but that's not really the depth of Claudio's character. Let's see, Chandra, who's indifferent about her younger brother's disappearance because she was too young to remember or care about him. Okay. Michael, not being the Michael that Alex knew in his childhood, but Michael from a timeline where he didn't move away. Bella leaving her reality and everything she knew. Stars and reality. So, like, these assertions of the characters are exactly just what Alex thinks of these characters, of these people. This neglects a lot of the deeper mentionings of what the characters are actually doing and what they have to deal with. Claudio uses a lot of nostalgia in order to relate to his brother. And the only reason he's even obsessed with the anime that he is because it was something that him and his brother watched together. This is something that's shown between how he and his little brother also, or the person that is isn't his little brother, but appears to be his little brother, wears a shirt of the same anime. Chandra really just wants to get past the fact that her twin brother, is missing, and how it guides Claudio's life. So much so that he's asked, "Oh, don't you have mystical twin powers? Like you should feel him out there in the world." And such. She's constantly put under by the fact that her brother is missing. And so it bothers her a lot whenever it's mentioned. Michael understands a lot of things that he shouldn't really understand. Michael's really bothered by the whole thing that Alex does. And he kind of just goes along because, Alex believes him to be this best friend person. And he wants Alex to get better. And he thinks if he's there, he can help push Alex to be a better person. But he can't because Alex is ultimately self-centered. Bella is running away from her problems. She does not want to face them head on. She wants to move. She wants to just act as if they don't exist anymore. And so she just keeps running away from her, running away. She's leaving her reality because she can't deal with what's going on in her life. And becomes an object of obsession of Alex. And she doesn't want that. She doesn't like Alex in any way. but she goes along with Alex because, you know, he forces her along. He keeps bringing up things, trying to be involved in her life. And then Rory. Rory is someone who's desperate for attention. He's somebody who's struggled to feel important in any way. The only person that made him feel like he belonged in this world killed herself. And so he feels as though he doesn't belong in this world. And so he attaches himself to this meaningful search for his sister. Maybe his sister didn't kill herself. Maybe there's something else going on that can bring back meaning to his life. And when he finds a group of people that share similar tragedies, he feels like he can attach himself to those people. And yeah, that's more or less it. So these aren't really that shallow characters. They have quite a bit of depth. The problem is that you have to kind of go and find that depth. And if you're not wanting to like the game, you're not going to find that depth for any of these characters. So, and I know somebody's going to just go, well, why is Alex the most important character to Rory? Why were you able to stop him from committing suicide? And it's more so a thing that Alex really wishes he could have. And that's the only way I see it. It's not that Alex really could stop Rory from committing suicide. He just wants to be a part of wish fulfillment. And that's why you have that scene where Rory says it's not your fault. Because that's what Alex wants. Alex wants it to have not been his fault. He wants to have not pushed Rory away.
These at best, but are completely pointless at their worst. I am having trouble remembering character arcs, but that's assuming they even existed in the first place. The game struggles juggling what they want to do with these characters in the story. They lack any likable chemistry. The themes of not wanting to take responsibility and growing up are basic ideas that are begging to be uncovered in this setting.
Damn. It's kind of like how I just explained throughout this video, how these two themes are, really well expressed throughout the game, and you just kind of glossed over them.
But the game seems too laser focused on telling a story that thinks it's much grander than it actually is. Why do characters talk about how glad they are about meeting Alex, who's unredeemable by design? What have they seen that I haven't seen? This game...
Maybe it isn't that. Like I said, they actually see something in Alex. It's that Alex wants them to have seen something in him.
The game's fantasy is uninspiring, the rules of this world are confusing, and I'm just left feeling hollow by the end of it. So it's a turn-based RPG with minigame elements similar to the Paper Mario franchise.
I probably don't have much to say.
Mainly because the amount of effort
Right.
to execute during a skills minigame isn't worth the damage. Some are simple, but others are confusing to execute, and there's no way to practice these minigames besides trial and error during battle. This doesn't really matter later, however, thanks to the broken LP toss skill. It's a one-shot party hit skill that ruins the mid to late game. So the first half of the game is boring because of how long each battle takes. But then the second half is boring because it becomes too easy. Ignoring that skill, however, most party members function the same way. They're damage dealers with a variety of minigames to set themselves apart. Alex and Essentia's regular attacks are the best in my opinion. Trying to see how many hits you can get in a row felt great since they did decent damage with high combos, rewarding you for your skill. If everyone's minigames were as impactful as these attacks and different dodge mechanics popped up more like that Japanese guy's mech boss, then this game wouldn't be too bad. So the combat had potential. It just sucks that the game feels static. Your opponents are visually different, but are mechanically the same.
I say that about UrickSaladbar. While I hate his fucking opinions, and I think that he fosters a really toxic mindset based off of those opinions and how he doesn't really gets the point and misrepresents what he's talking about to make a point. the videos look beautiful. They are super fucking stylish, and the artwork is amazing. And so I like watching them because of that, but whew.
Same, showing no signs that these enemies are tougher than the last, so extra thought and strategy is not required.
Okay, so they scale with you as the game develops, and then there's also stronger enemies that have crowns on them. So it's really rough when you're like telling me, oh, they're stronger than before, and there's no way to show this. And it's like, well, they scale with you. And then if there is one that is significantly stronger, it has a crown on its head. So yeah, there is. There's a lot to that I could go on about what he's wrong about with the combat and everything. But the combat's been fixed. It's a lot better now. It's a lot more engaging. It is an enjoyable experience in my opinion. So I don't have any reason to talk about this.
Required to survive these battles, and characters don't feel any more powerful than they did at the start of the game. And the fact you have to use the mind dungeon to get stronger makes me not want to level up.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
I fucking love JRPGs. I love turn-based RPGs. I realized the other day, this is the problem with indie RPGs. All indie RPGs, oh, not all. There's a few that I'm going to mention later that don't fall into this trap. But a lot of indie RPGs have the same problem. And it's not that, oh, I'm inspired by Earthbound, or I'm inspired by these games, and I just don't understand what makes them work. The main problem with RPGs, indie RPGs specifically, is they're focused on the storytelling of RPGs. They think that the story and how it develops and all of this is what makes an RPG an RPG. And they're not wrong, but what they fail to grasp a lot of the times is how the combat works, how you engage with the game, what you are experiencing moment to moment, and how that is almost more important in an RPG. Newer RPGs by Square Enix kind of fail on this because they think that instead of being turn-based, you need to be more active. And like, yeah, that's been a problem since which Final Fantasy introduced the active time combat? I don't know. I know it was before 7. I can't remember at the top of my head. But it's a problem they've been dealing with a lot. Instead of making the RPG combat and the storytelling more engaging, they go, let's make it closer to just real-time combat. 4, yeah. And in a sense, Final Fantasy does that, and it was a good change. Active time combat, ATB turn-based was really sick. I think it's a lot of fun. And it also pushes it away from Dragon Quest, stylistically. But they don't try to think of more interesting mechanics in order to deliver the combat. And if they do, or if they focus on that, they're usually based on emulating something else that they've had or experienced before, like Bug Fables. Bug Fables is a fantastic fucking game. I think it's beautiful. It's really fun to play. But what it's trying to do is it's trying to emulate the Paper Mario style. And while that's really good, and I appreciate it because we haven't had a good Paper Mario RPG in a long time, it's not developing on top of that much. It's not iterating on that design. And then there's other games like Undertale that goes, well, what if we combine bullet hell mechanics and like a negotiation system and make that the combat? And like, yeah, these are really good ideas, but you're not focusing on the core of how to make turn-based RPG mechanics more engaging. And you're just making an RPG because you like the storytelling in RPGs. And I will agree that at the beginning, YIIK fell into that trap. Now with 1.25, it has pulled its way out of that hole. It has delivered an interesting combat mechanic, or an interesting combat system that is engaging and it's fun to play with. So it's a rough state that RPGs are in, and I think it's not necessarily a negative thing against other RPGs that are built in this way. It's more of like an observation of why a lot of these systems are underwhelming. That was a lot.
By the way, the Mind Dungeon is a place where you assign stats by entering doors, and assigning them is pretty sluggish. The problem is that it takes 6 button presses minimum to assign one stat to your character. Now do this 4 times, confirm to the crew that you want this, and do this every time you want to level up. This is one of the most tedious leveling systems I've ever experienced.
I can agree that this should have been streamlined a bit more. I think that's something they're working on for 1.5. But yes, it does have a little bit of storytelling in it, so it's not, completely awful.
And around December, the game tells you to get as many levels as possible, because Y2K is coming. I was level 63 by the end of December, ready for an onslaught of difficult fights. But there are only 6.
Yeah, non-diegetic, not even just the battles, but like also the way you interact with the story. Every RPG that I've seen, especially just keeping it turn-based, almost all of them have a straightforward story that is like, oh, it might have some stuff that you can do, like side content, side quests that get developed pretty well. The social system in Persona 5 is probably the best side quest system anybody's ever seen. But at the end of the day, none of that matters. The story is exactly the same regardless of whether or not you do that stuff. Y2K, on the other hand, has different endings based on what you do, and that's fucking engaging as fuck. And like, you could bring up Undertale, but that one's kind of... It reacts to what you do as you're playing the game, and that's super cool. But it's less of a turn-based RPG and more of almost just like a visual novel, in my opinion. Yes, you have these mechanics and stuff that you have to do, but really it's a visual novel. You're talking to these characters and trying to do things that would specifically get them to surrender. Or you're engaging with a bullet hell mechanic. Either or you pick. I feel like YIIK does a good job with it, but I don't think it's perfect by any means. I just think it's like, oh, this is more interesting. You have more that you can do based on how you play the game and what you do.
6 fights after that point, 2 of which are unbeatable. Imagine actually spending the entire month grinding, then one-shotting those scripted bosses only to see they have 1 pip of health left. So you have to wait for your overleveled characters to get knocked out by the boss because the story calls for it.
This has been fixed. They have 1-hit kills now.
Is really insulting. From the combat to the leveling to the world you are exploring, the superficial charm is greatly overshadowed by the tedium you're required to experience to progress through the game. If the broken LP toss ability wasn't present, this game would be absolutely intolerable. But whatever, here are some other miscellaneous things that I couldn't add into this video.
The economy's broken. We talked about that. Could have been a physical manifestations of Alex's... Okay. This panda point is ridiculous. Because in an aspect, that's what the Essentia is. So it's like, oh, you missed the point of panda by understanding what the Essentia kind of is. And also, it does do some of that as well. Lacks engaging atmosphere. And the setting is not a place I am eager to explore. I guess he just doesn't like New Jersey then. There's a bunch of cut content that's not cut. Looks promising when doing some research on the game. Neat puzzles, environments, and even Prosper Ross fight. That's the dialogue mechanic. Too bad it went unused. It's not unused! You're just stupid! Can we go through one YIIK video without people saying that the third ending is cut? Can we please? Can we please go one YIIK video without saying the third ending is cut? I'm just, please, one time, one time. Not like New Jersey is a fair stance. Yeah, that's fair. The postmodern stuff doesn't seem to add much to the narrative. Yeah, because you just completely ignored it. Unreliable narration, it's reality, blah, 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 blah. Cool concept of the game, handle it poorly, I consume blame, blah, 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 blah. Why Alex's 2010 hipster outfit's in the 90s? Because it doesn't take place in the 90s. It takes place later. And Alex is just explaining shit. Camera's a bit weird in some places. Sure. Awkwardly zooming in. Yeah, that's sure. Why not? That's fine. Little things during combat that add up, making it not as satisfying as it should be. Like the next boxes go too fast for you to lead the flavor text. You know, a lot of people complain about this, but they still complain about how slow the combat is. The screen looks a tad chaotic. Playing on PC with the PS4 controller, for some reason the square button never worked no matter how many times I remap the controls. I don't understand what that issue is. Like, I think they tried to bug fix the controls a lot, but I don't know what issue he's running into. It's hard to properly make out the damage numbers, how quickly and pixelated they appear, so it doesn't feel good to do loads of damage to enemies. I don't know. I don't care. Claudia or Michael should have been the protagonist. I wrote a rough outline of how Michael in particular is an asshole could work. Check the description for that. Maybe I will. But no, you don't understand the point of Alex if you think that some other character should be the protagonist. I like Michael a lot. I think I made a meme how Michael is the protagonist of YIIK, which could be argued. But yeah, I do like Claudia and Michael a lot. He's just addressing how this is not Andrew, and it's a fucking meme. He's not a self-insert at all. The plagiarism, Lamau. Okay, all of this, I'm done.
To not end on a sour note, the most consistently good thing about this game is the music. The leitmotif they use the most is catchy, and most tracks sound good for the most part. A few cross into the so quirky it becomes irritating category, but hey, it's nowhere near as offensive as what the gameplay and narrative provides. If you want to support the studio, the music is on Bandcamp. So
Andrew does make good music.
The game is around $19 on Steam, and if we're judging this as a product, you can get more bang for your buck elsewhere. Make it 3/4 or half its price, and maybe...
Wow. Can you imagine having the gall to tell somebody that their 5 years worth of project that has 20 hours of content is not worth what they're pricing it for? The fucking gall of that statement is absolutely fucking absurd. I hate when people do this. I hate when people go, the amount of the price I'm paying, dollar per hour of enjoyment or whatever. It is a reductive metric to fucking compare the quality of anything to. It's so... Oh, sorry. It is such a insufferable way of viewing video games. I bought the game on sale multiple times. I don't think it's bad to say, hey, wait for a sale for this game. I think that's completely fair. But holy shit, dude. No. I want my games to pay at least minimum wage. Yeah. I don't think the price of YIIK is at all absurd. Considering how big the game is, how ambitious it is. Sure, if you don't like it, I could see why you don't think that's a fair price. But when you see the amount of content and the amount of things that exist within the game, I can't agree.
Maybe I'd recommend it for the experience. It's a bloated game that strives to do great things, and I can see a diamond in the rough, but it misses its mark every single time. As an indie game, it fails to live up to its contemporaries. As an RPG, it's a tedious experience.
Every indie game has to be innovative. I don't know, man. Comparing artwork to other artwork is always a rough place to try to go when you're talking about what its faults are. And if a point you're trying to make is simply just comparing it to something else and saying it doesn't live up to this, fuck off, honestly. That's not a valuable point in any way. If you cannot speak on the artwork on its own legs, then maybe you shouldn't speak about it. Aaron, internet. Yes, I understand that. It's always been a really troublesome metric, and I get why people talked about it, but they didn't understand. The people that say that and mean it do not understand the work it takes to make a video game. And the only reason some games can be priced as low as they are is because the work was either low, or it ends up having a huge audience, or it's reliant on the fact that multiple people are playing the game. The reason Among Us can be $5 or free is because that is reliant on having a large player base. And when you have a large player base, you don't have to worry about, getting a lot of revenue. That game asks you as an audience member, hey, get your friends to buy this game, or get your friends to download this game for free and deal with advertisements. That is asking, if it's asking for 100 players that they know will play it, that's asking for those people to find 8 other people. That's asking for 800 players. That is a larger audience than what, hey, this is a single player experience is. So the single player experience needs to be priced higher than this multiplayer experience, or this one that it knows that it has a larger audience. And that's just a business perspective on top of not the artistry that goes behind making it, and having a full voice acted cast of professional voice actors coming in, flying them in to your studio to voice act your game. There's so many aspects of it. Having, Michael Kelly Garrod or Bowen come and do songs for your game. No, you're not understanding what it took to make the game. Why are you trying to ascribe a price to it?
It's crippled by ambition and pretension. It's not special because it's postmodern. It's special because of its failure. If you want a self-aware turn-based RPG with charming art, neat combat, and goofy voice acting, may I suggest the Disgaea franchise?
I live in a reality where somebody said Disgaea is a better game than YIIK. Where Disgaea's combat is better than YIIK's. Disgaea's combat is the most recycled garbage ever. And I say that as somebody who loved the Disgaea, or that series. I after I had finished Phantom Brave, I've been so sick of that formula. The formula is so recycled and one note. Yeah, it's fun, I guess, but
One and 2 are on Steam alongside their sister game Phantom Brave. While it may be unfair to compare an indie game to a more established company,
yes, thank you for recognizing that. It is unfair to compare YIIK to triple fucking huge studio with a fuck ton of money. If you want games like YIIK, there's not a lot of games like YIIK, honestly. There's not a lot of games that have you play as it doesn't have a story as in depth as YIIK. You don't have games with combat that are nearly as interesting as YIIK, in my opinion. There are great RPGs that you could play, but I don't think that that's a good. When it comes to me recommending people games, I always recommend them on really specific points. I don't try to wrap them up and say it's this whole thing. If you like YIIK, here's other games that you might, or if you don't, if you want to try YIIK, here's other games that have similarities. Super Hot Story has similarities to YIIK. So if you liked the story of Super Hot, that might be something you want to check out. If you like the tone and like the way that comedy is handled in a show like Neo Yokio, you might like YIIK. If you like the combat that's in like the Mario and Luigi series, you might like YIIK. But nothing has all of those together in a nice package like YIIK does. And it makes it really unique. That's what makes it fun, in my opinion.
They're the same price as Y2K. Dollars are equal amongst products regardless of team and effort. So at the end of the day, the product you deliver should be worth the price I'm paying for. And what you're paying for is disappointment, which sucks. Let's hope they take another risk and it pays off greatly, because Y2...
What was that about Andrew's statements that he said
Which
here?
sucks. Let's hope they take another risk.
Some people did some pretty shitty things. If you want to serious people bashing his game and explaining, to watch the Dick Show. Finding this game not only bad, but offensive. A Tumblr post, The Art of Review, YIIK, a postmodern RPG. I haven't read that, and I don't want to.
And it pays off greatly, because Y2K proves that Axe Studios have good ideas.
They made a post about it on Steam after a whole year as the game's release. Oh, okay, so like this is a little bit of a misconception about this. People like to frame it as if they've only recently tried to fix the game. No. They had updated the game 7 times after its release because they were trying to fix things quickly. And then they realized that to really fix things about the game and really deliver an experience they thought was good, they would have to add a whole year and a half of development. That's why 1.25 has taken so long. It was a whole additional year of development onto the game. This is what the game would look like if it had more than, a few 6 months of redevelopment after a few things. Like this is what the game would look like if it had a longer development cycle. Also, in the meantime of developing this game, they had worked on another game called Starstruck, getting it to where it is right now. Andrew did the music, and Brian did some programming and the art for that game. They also have been working on another game in the meantime. They aren't fully funded by their last effort. They have to go out and find other projects to work on. And the fact that people just think that they're just working on YIIK the whole time and always frame the argument as if they are really just doesn't help. Oh, by the way, Axe Studios is 2 people. Just as an additional note to this idea.
Have good ideas. It's just that their latest game ended up being wasted potential.
I don't know. I know he did a bulk of the artwork. I think I've heard that he did some programming, but it might have been just like initial stuff, like probably to show what, or like prototype level stuff, I think is what I had heard. I don't know how in depth their involvement with Starstruck is outside of the 3D modeling and artwork being done by Brian for the most part, and then the music being mostly done by Andrew. There we go. that's me explaining why Yurik is fucking wrong about YIIK, and he's a dumb idiot that, or whatever he said earlier, who doesn't understand anything. Whatever. I can't remember. So I'm going to take a short break, and then we're going to get into actually Amori, what this stream is about, and why I'm so mad at UrickSaladbar for being a dumb piece of dumb meat who promotes toxic behavior in the game sphere. We're going to take a quick break. Yeah.